So, my project is titled Sine Manu, Sine Worries Women and How They Secured Personal Independence from the Patriarchy in the Roman Empire. We're going to specifically talk about the various methods that were used by the women. This is becoming priestesses, benefactresses, using loopholes in enforcement, utilizing patriarchal expectations and male privilege, and also becoming tribades. We have a picture of a benefactress on the far left and a priestess on the closer to the text. In terms of priestesses, which is the ones we're going to focus on just because we have the most information, this was the only office available to women at the time since they could not run for political office. And there were two types, imperial, which were called flaminci, and non-imperial, which were sacerdos. To be a priestess, you had to pay a summa honorarum, which was basically a large sum of money. So this office was kind of limited to women who had the prestige and were of the upper class so that they would be able to afford that since they had to finance the religious festivities that were part of their temple. In terms of Vestal virgins, which was a specific type of priestess, there were 6 Vestal virgins that were chosen and they served 30-year terms. To be eligible, their parents had to be married, they had to be alive, and they had to be under an alive male patria potestas. They could be of any social class, though. They could be freedmen. So it didn't really matter social class in this instance. Once they were chosen to become Vestal virgins, they went through a captio ceremony, which was basically like a marriage ceremony to the state, kind of. And they lost familial succession rights, and they became under the patria potestas of the Pontifex Maximus instead of their father, or whoever the patria potestas is in their family. They also had to take a vow of celibacy, and there was some exceptions to this, which we'll talk about a little bit. So there were a lot of benefits for becoming Vestal virgins, specifically out of the priestesses. In terms of, in general, every priestess had the power to command others. They had lictors that were underneath them that they used to organize events. In terms of specifically Vestal virgins, they were not allowed to cook or mill. So this kind of separated them from the patriarchal, any kind of patriarchal norms for them to be taking care of the house by cooking. They did not have to have children or get married if they did not want to. This is because they had the jus laborum, which meant that they did not have to have someone managing their finances. And so they were kind of independent if they decided to be. And since obviously they had to serve 30-year terms, by the time they were old enough and out of the priestess office, they were up there in age, so they didn't really have to have children if they did not want to, unlike how some of the laws stated that women needed to get married and have children if they had been not married for a certain amount of time. The Vestal virgins also gained entrance into male spaces. They were very important in the community, and they got to sit with senators at public games, which gained them a lot of influence that they wouldn't have gotten before since they cannot vote. Women in general could not vote. They were also paid upon entry and every year after, so kind of like a stipend. This was definitely a financial advantage to doing this. They also had relative freedom since their important duties lessened the likelihood that they would be severely punished for their wrongdoings. So in the terms of Vestal virgins breaking their celibacy vow, which is a pretty important law for them, they could be put to death, but I haven't found any examples in my research that showed that they do that. Instead, they just got flogged, which is a definite downgrade, and showed that they had a lot more freedom because of the difference in potestas. And here's my works cited for specifically the priestess part. And I just want to say thank you guys for coming and listening, and I can't wait to answer your questions.